Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Lorne Brown. He is a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, a clinical hypnotherapist, and really recognized as a pioneer in the field of fertility and reproductive health. He's the clinical director of Acubalance Wellness Center, which is located in Vancouver, Canada, and has really dedicated his career to helping individuals and couples achieve their dreams of parenthood. He's an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to supporting fertility. And today we're really going to dive into how you can get pregnant better and also faster. So I'm all about that. Welcome, Dr. Lorne. It's such a pleasure to have you on today.
Hey, Dr. Katie, I'm glad to be on here. I've been listening to your podcast, so I'm honored to be one of your guests.
Well, thank you. So I always love to start by touching on a little bit about you, your background. We can touch on your amazing years of experience that you have under your belt and how supporting fertility ended up becoming a passion of yours.
Sure. Well, I used to be a CPA, so, professional accountant, and I had health issues.
Wow.
And I got into Chinese medicine because that's what changed my life. All my digestive issues and chronic fatigue and candida, all that stuff back in the day. That was back in the 90s. And then I went back to school and studied, became a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. I've been in practice since 2000. And around 2001, 2002, somebody came to me with fertility challenges. They had been traveling from Vancouver to Houston to see Dr. Randine Lewis, who wrote the book, The Infertility Cure, a Chinese medicine doctor, who ended up becoming my mentor because she told the woman that was seeing her that it's not practical to come into Houston once a week from Vancouver for acupuncture. You need to find somebody locally, and I was the person she picked, and I was a young practitioner then, and Randine mentored me, and I always loved from the Western perspective the hormonal system, and then how Chinese medicine addressed hormonal health and fertility, and women talk, and especially in the fertility circle. And next thing you know, I can't see anybody but fertility, so I dedicated my practice to reproductive health. I went on to train in clinical hypnotherapy. I've done some functional medicine training, training in low-level laser therapy, and here we are today, where I have the Acubalance Wellness Center in Vancouver. We were the first clinic to we actually set up the IVF acupuncture on site in Vancouver, BC at the IVF clinic. So we're the ones that got it started. It wasn't a friendly invitation either back in 2002, just so you know. Now all the clinics pretty much do it. But in 2002, it wasn't a friendly welcome, but we persevered, and now we do integration. And we're on site for IVF acupuncture at the largest clinic here in Vancouver.
Wow, that is quite the shift from CPA to like a fertility expert. Really, that's amazing. I love that.
I bring it into my practice because, we do a fertility audit. So we really like to do comprehensive testing beyond what we do from conventional testing. And so that auditor background has helped us in our clinic, because most people that come see us say, I want to leave no stone unturned. Like, why am I not getting pregnant? What else can we do? And rather than just being put into an IVF cycle or being told to do donor eggs, a lot of them are saying, come on, there must be something we can see that may be causing the issue. And so that CPA side of me does come into our practice. And this is the kind of health audit that people do like to have, because they do want to know what could be going on. And so we do the conventional testing as well as the naturopathic functional medicine testing to see where these imbalances are.
That's great. What a good transferable skill that you could have and bring into your practice. That's amazing. So when it comes to getting pregnant better and faster, like how does that break down? What does that look like?
You know, that quote comes from a reproductive endocrinologist that was speaking at the Integrated Fertility Symposium that I chaired. And it was Dr. Paul Magarelli, and he said, together we're good, together as in the IVF clinics and the naturopath and acupuncturist, we're good at helping people get pregnant better and faster. And he was
Mm,
on a panel, and he pointed to the naturopath and acupuncturist on his panel saying, you help people get pregnant better. And then he pointed to
mm,
himself and the reproductive urologist and the other reproductive endocrinologist and says, we help people get pregnant faster. And what he meant is all the stuff we do with diet and lifestyle, acupuncture herbs, low level laser therapy, mind body, all that has an epigenetic impact on on your body, on the cell, meaning that the health blueprint of your future child is being influenced on what you're doing the months, not just after pregnancy, but the months leading up to conception and then during that pregnancy. And
mhm,
so all the stuff that we're doing to support and optimize fertility, as I say, to help you get to peak fertility potential, that has an epigenetic impact. So that's where he says we help people get pregnant better. And then when he meant faster is, well, when you do IVF, we take egg, we take sperm, we know we have an embryo, and we put it in the uterus. So we can help get there faster because we can bypass so many obstacles by placing and if it's tested, a normal embryo, chromosomally normal embryo into a uterus.
mhm,
And so together, we can help people get pregnant better and faster. And one of the reproductive endocrinologists that I often do talks with, she used the term like, garbage in, garbage out. Loosely, she used it saying that if you do an IVF and the egg quality is poor, the sperm quality is really poor, then it's unlikely you're going to get pregnant because we need to have good building blocks. So we also help get pregnant faster if we're able to optimize the egg and sperm cell, therefore the embryo quality, and of course uterine receptivity, because we see so many go through IVF where they have tested normal, chromosomally normal embryos and they still don't implant. And so uterine receptivity is also an important part of this equation. And what I like to share is our approach is the healthy baby approach, because that's our goal. Our goal is not just to get pregnant. Our goal is to have a healthy baby. And I know, listening and reading your material, that's our goal. We want a healthy baby. And that comes from healthy egg plus healthy sperm plus healthy uterine environment. And so our goal is, can we help you reach your peak fertility potential at the time of conception? So the egg at its peak fertility potential, the sperm at its peak fertility potential at the time of conception, whether that's natural or through an IVF.
mhm. Yeah, totally. And for anyone who's listening, maybe they've heard this word thrown around before, but they might not understand the meaning. Like, what is epigenetics?
Well, we have our genes, but our health is not our genes. There's a small percentage of genes that determine your health. Most of them are based on lifestyle, diet, and your environment. So genes are getting turned on and off. So the epigenetics are the turning on and off genes. And so through certain dietary lifestyle, so how you sleep, how you eat, how you exercise, your community, all these things, the environment is influencing whether genes get turned on or off for disease or for longevity and health. And so, if you're constantly stressed, these stress hormones lead to chronic systemic inflammation that leads to accelerated biological aging. We don't want that when it comes to reproductive health. We want to be as biologically young as possible, right?
Mhm,
When you're chronically stressed, we have blood being diverted from the reproductive system, and we have these stress hormones, right? Cortisol and adrenaline and other stress hormones, which in short bursts can save your lives. They're important, but if they're constant throughout your day on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, they're turning on disease processes.
mhm,
Just like if you're in joy and you're in free flow and you're in trust and you've got movement, you're going out with friends, you're enjoying your friends, and you got serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine being released, well, they're going to turn on and off genes that are going to connect to longevity and also better reproductive health.
mhm. Absolutely. And a question that just popped up in my mind, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is our biological age versus chronological age. So let's, talking about women who are over 35, maybe even over 40, when they're able to support that healthy egg quality in terms of like epigenetics? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the biological age. And I use the term inflammation, and there's an actual terminology where they call it inflammaging. And so if you
Mm,
have this chronic systemic inflammation, it leads to accelerated biological aging, which leads to degenerative diseases, and I say premature fertility decline. So a lot of these diseases, joint pain and cardiovascular disease, which we thought were always age related, are really lifestyle related, and so they've become um, older biologically than they are chronologically. And so I'll give you
mhm,
an example. Woman came to us 40 after an unsuccessful IVF. She didn't respond well, and she came to us. She had constipation. She was
mm,
really cold and fatigued, severe menstrual pain. And, based on her hormone profile, even though she was chronologically 40 and how she responded in the IVF, she was like a 47-year-old biologically, where chronologically she was 40.
mm,
Over a 3 to 4 month period, she was also overweight. Without counting calorie, following our Acubalance fertility diet, she lost over 20 pounds. She was no longer constipated. She was no longer cold. And her menstrual pain had diminished greatly from like a 9 out of 10 to like a 1 out of 10, no longer needing medication.
mm,
And then she went in. So now she was biologically more like a 40-year-old versus a 47-year-old, even though she was chronologically 40. And she did another IVF because her clinic said, hey, you're only getting older, but she was only getting older chronologically. Um, she went in and that cycle gave her twins, right, from that
wow.
IVF cycle.
Oh my
And
gosh.
when I share this, just to put this into realistic terms, I'm not saying I can take a chronologically 40-year young woman and make her 30 biologically. We can get you to your chronological age. So if you come at 40 and you're biologically 48, you can become biologically 40. And we know 40-year-old women can have babies. But if you come chronologically 55, the best we're going to get you biologically is 55, and that's outside the reproductive span for humans at this point in time. I think the
Hmm.
oldest person to conceive naturally was maybe 52 that had a live birth.
Wow.
Right? I think that's the oldest. So, and even in Chinese medicine, there is a reproductive window
Yeah.
which ends around 49 plus or minus a few years.
Hmm.
So, we're always looking at where are you kind of biologically. And so we look at, what's your sleep like, what's your skin like, what's your bowels like, what's your energy like, obviously hormonal profiles. And we can, we work up the people we see so we can see their AMH hormones, their FSH, their estradiol, their LH. We'll look at their blood sugar levels, but we also look at just physically how are their bodies responding. And
Hmm.
so if you have diarrhea or constipation, if you have insomnia, if you're chronically cold or really hot, these are all things that we're looking at, what's happening with the blood flow, the circulation. These are all things giving us indication of what kind of health are you expressing. And so
Hmm.
going back to hopefully I answered your question of biological age,
Yeah.
but there are things that people can do. And Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, who's a naturopathic doctor, wrote a book called Younger You. And within an 8-week period, they were able to reverse people's biological age. And they were following what we call the Acubalance approach to peak fertility, where they looked at the gut microbiome, they looked at movement and diet, and they looked at community. And these
Hmm.
things dramatically improved certain markers of joint pain, hand grip, cholesterol level, blood sugars. They could measure things. There was subjective and objective things that they could measure to see a change in just 8 weeks. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to optimize our health, which can optimize our fertility.
Hmm. I love that, especially because you were saying she has constipation, which I feel like is really common these days, is we're just extremely constipated for many different
Yeah.
reasons. And I think that gut health seems to really go under the radar, at least in Western medicine. It's just kind of dismissed, but gut health is so important when it comes to our fertility, managing the inflammation in our body. There's just such a great connection with our immune system, reproduction, so many things.
The microbiome is a hot topic, and it can affect your mood, it can
Yeah.
affect your skin, it can affect your reproductive health. And I was just at the Canadian Fertility Andrology Society in Toronto in September of 2023. And in it, there was one of the presentations talked about the uterine microbiome and how it can impact implantation failure. And then they went on to say, but it's not just that. The vaginal microbiome and the gut microbiome, it's systemic. It can be impacting everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the conclusion was that all this can impact egg quality and uterine receptivity, and we need to develop drugs to address this. What I thought was interesting is naturopathic physicians and Chinese medicine doctors have been looking at the microbiome for a long time and have a way to address it through certain herbs and supplements and diet lifestyle, because there's many things that can affect your microbiome, including stress, by the way, right? And your environment, whether you're breastfed or not, where you were born, the chemicals in your environment. So many things can impact it. So it is a holistic, comprehensive approach to address it. And we can test now the gut microbiome to see what kind of imbalances you have. And so
Mm-hmm.
we do address that in our approach, because so many people have their microbiome out of balance, and it can impact so many areas of your health and well-being. And our goal is, people are coming to us because they want to get pregnant, but we know a healthy body becomes a fertile body as well. And so we are looking at all areas. So we want them to have good mental health and mood. We want them to be able to sleep deeply and restoratively. We want them to have comfortable body temperature so they're not having these cold hands and feet or feeling cold all the time. We want clear skin, good hair, good strong nails. We're looking at all these things that show us wellness and vitality in the body, because that's how we're going to, again, get you to peak fertility potential. I'd love, Katie, if it's okay, to share kind of like this metaphor from a Chinese medicine perspective that kind of makes sense when you think about how we treat our plants, for example. And
Mm-hmm.
there's an expression in Chinese medicine that's connected to fertility that says, nourish the soil before you plant the seed.
Mm-hmm.
And the soil here is kind of like analogy for our cellular environment. But if you take a plant that you've neglected, rather than tossing it, oftentimes we just add water, fertilizer. We may have to pull some weeds, and this plant will go on to regain its vigor and give off fruits and flowers. But we didn't do donor roots, right? We didn't do anything to the roots. The plant always had the potential to give off fruits and flowers, but because its soil was suboptimal, it wasn't reaching its peak potential. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is the same thing for the egg and sperm cell. The environment that it's in, the cellular environment, may be suboptimal. Poor blood flow, too many poor detox pathways, or too many chemicals, toxins, endocrine disruptors, inflammation, oxidative stress. Um, these are things, poor nutrition, the mitochondria, the battery cells could be damaged. All these things on a cellular level will prevent the egg cell or the sperm cell from reaching their peak fertility potential. And by doing things to increase blood flow, um, by doing things to improve mitochondrial function, to regulate the hormones. So, the soil, if the pH is off, so think of hormonal imbalances. If the soil is depleted of nutrients, there's your nutritional deficiencies. If there's inflammation, oxidative stress, the soil's microbiome's off. All these things will affect the plant. And so if we address the soil, the cellular environment, then the cell can reach its peak potential and hopefully give off a child. And
Mm-hmm.
how we address the soil then from the human perspective is really simple. How do we address the soil, the mitochondrial health? How do we address blood flow and circulation to the reproductive system, hormones, nutritional deficiencies, inflammation, oxidative stress in the gut and uterine microbiome? It's simple. Through diet,
Mm-hmm.
through lifestyle, which is movement, rest, sleep, through purposely eliciting a relaxation response, meditation, having community. So these are things that we can do that will support that. And then we can add acupuncture, we can add low-level laser therapy. There's Chinese herbal medicine. There's certain supplements. Our clinic does nutritional IV therapy. There's even more testing to see what's wrong with your soil, right? What's out of balance. So that is how we address the soil. Nourish the soil before you plant the seed. And so we know it's about 100 days of follicular genesis. So when you ovulate or to go through an IVF, it's about 1 year of recruitment that those follicles are in before they are chosen to be ovulated or picked up in an IVF. but it seems like the last 100 days, that's why so many people say 3 months. It's really 3.5 to 4 months, 100 days. That's when those follicles really grow, download their FSH receptor sites. That's where they get their blood flow, and they really grow and can be impacted. That's when
Mhm.
they're really being impacted by their soil, by their environment. And so many people, I hear they're smokers, they're not eating well, living well, and they get their period, and they're like, now for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be really healthy. Well, that's only 14 days out of 100. So really, to impact to that peak fertility is, what have you done 100 days before that?
Yeah.
And that's how we're impacting the epigenetics as well, those 100 days before. And sperm
Mhm.
is about 70 to 90 days for the spermogenesis. However, I have on our website, where I've interviewed a few times, reproductive urologist, Dr. Paul
Mhm.
Turek, and he said, although theoretically, within 3 months, if we do something like a varicocele repair, where we know it's repaired in that moment,
Yep.
we would expect to see the change in sperm quality, count, and quality within 3 months, right?
Mhm.
But he says often it takes 6 months, but we don't know why, because spermogenesis is 3 months. So
Mhm.
that's also when if you have male factor, it's that 3 to 6 month period sometimes to see a significant change.
Yeah, I loved that metaphor. It's beautiful. I had to use, or I saw an acupuncturist, did some Chinese herbs, lots of gua sha and moxie on my fertility journey. And I was pregnant. Everyone's journey is different, but within 3 months of working with this practitioner. So I totally resonate with that metaphor of really nourishing that soil. And ironically, like what you were saying, is really getting that blood flow back to the reproductive organs. That was a big issue that I had, was a lot of blood stagnation, because I had been on
Right.
birth control for 13 years prior to trying to get pregnant. So we think that that was a big cause of what was going on, and probably obviously other factors as well. So I can definitely resonate with that. And that 100-day period, for sure, that's really, really a pivotal period of time where it is important to be able to stay on track. And sometimes people do need support, from people like you and your practice, or people like me, just to keep them on track, instead of, like you were saying, oh, I'm in my follicular phase. This is
Mhm.
when I really need to dial in on my diet, or whatever it may be. It is, much more of a longer time period that you kind of have to do that.
Yeah, and you talked about the blood stagnation. I just wanted to talk on that. In Chinese medicine, when we look at the menstrual cycle from the West, if you have pain with your period, or if you have clotting with your menstruation, often your doctor may say that's normal. Normal doesn't mean healthy. Normal just means a lot of people have it, and you're not going to die from it. In Chinese medicine, clotting, PMS, and painful periods is considered not a healthy cycle. So we like to see healthy cycle. Where again, we're looking for peak fertility potential. We want to get you to that level of vitality and health. And so we call that, like, could be a form of blood stagnation or blood stasis, because we're seeing a poor microcirculation. And when we're doing the 100 days of treatment or treating, some people respond, some people don't. Like, we would expect you in that period of treatment, in the first month and over those 1 to 3 months of treatment, that your clotting diminishes or is gone, that your PMS is diminished or gone, that pain with your period is diminished and gone. And we can't promise everybody's going to get pregnant. However, we feel pretty confident that most people we see over 3 cycles will have an incredible improvement in their premenstrual symptoms, in their menstrual pain, in the clotting, in irregular blood flow. Dosaging matters. So I do see people, because our clinic's well known, I've been around for 20 plus years. We'll see people that come to us that have gone to other acupuncturists, and the difference, because they're doing sometimes very similar how I would treat with the acupuncture, but they were going every other week or once a month for acupuncture.
Mm.
Dosage matters, and most of the research shows twice a week to get the most
Wow.
benefit,
Okay.
or more. In China, they do it like daily, right, with a little bit of a
Yeah.
break. And so you kind of want to get the momentum going. And at the beginning, you may not have to do twice a week for 3 months, but definitely for a cycle. If I'm letting your listeners know, it's kind of like, it's like, you say you have high cholesterol and you're overweight, and you've heard the research says that exercise can reduce cholesterol levels and help you lose weight. So you work out once a week versus twice a week versus 3 times a week. You're going to get different benefit based on the dosage and the frequency of treatment, or you want to get an A+ on your exam and you study once a week versus twice a week versus 3 times a week. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the Richter scale. When we look at earthquakes, a Richter scale of 4 to 5 is not one, it's a multiple of like 10. So when you go from acupuncture once a week to twice a week, it's not that you double it, it's exponential, the
Yeah.
benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody has endometriosis or PCOS, like when we see PCOS, we'll see them 3 or 4 times a week.
Wow.
Um, and I can I share a story, because this just reminded me of PCOS and on dosage,
Absolutely.
but just to go into PCOS in this holistic approach. So she came to us because she wanted to help with uterine receptivity. She had PCOS. She does not menstruate on her own. She doesn't even menstruate when she does some of the ovulation drugs, letrozole or Clomid. And when they get her bleeds, it would often be with the progesterone withdrawal. So she did IVF, and she did a transfer that was negative, and then she did a transfer that was a chemical pregnancy. So
Mm-hmm.
she heard about us and came to us to help with uterine receptivity. And I shared our approach of nourishing the soul before you plant the seed. And if we're able to balance her hormones, because she had high androgens, blood sugars were off, she was overweight, she had hirsutism, she had depression, lots of digestive and bloating issues. And I said, if we're able to balance your hormones, which will help with uterine receptivity, because if you have high androgens, it's not great for uterine receptivity in the uterine environment, then theoretically, you could start ovulating again because we balanced the hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen this. So can you give us a minimum of 3 months to 6 months? Because that's what we see with PCOS, especially stubborn PCOS, like people that don't respond well to medication, even ovulation drugs. And over a 3 month period, she, again, this is similar to the other patient we saw, lost 20 pounds following our diet. She did the laser therapy. She did acupuncture 4 times a week with low-level laser therapy. She
Wow.
did the supplements. She did Chinese herbs. She said her hirsutism had diminished. Her acne had cleared up because she also had acne. She lost weight. Her mood improved. Her digestion improved. And she was wondering how much longer she should do this before doing her IVF cycle, another transfer. And I was thinking that here we've seen such good response, and she was wondering whether it was working. And going back to our analogy of nourishing the soil, it's kind of like you cultivate the soil, you compost the soil before you plant the seed, and then you plant a seed. I'm talking literally gardening here now, guys. When you plant the seed, and the next day you come out, you don't see a plant, and the next day you come out, you don't see a plant. You're like, I don't think it's working. But you keep watering because somebody said to keep watering. You keep pulling weeds, maybe add fertilizer. A week goes by, you still see nothing. But underneath the soil, amazing things are happening. The seed starts to
Mm-hmm.
sprout, and against incredible weight of the dirt, zero light, it starts to sprout and go up. And then eventually it sprouts. So in her case, it wasn't even under the dirt; it was above the dirt. She had sprouts. She just didn't have fruits or flowers yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I encouraged her, because we saw so many great changes with her skin, her weight, her mood, her digestion, her hirsutism, to give us another month, and then go into her frozen transfer, because I feel like we've had some balance. And why? Remember that 300 days? It's not just treatment for 100 days. I wanted her cellular environment to be bathed in the balanced hormones for 3 months. So I wanted her cells to have low androgen levels for 3 months. So I just wanted her to have another month in that good environment. And lo and behold, she ovulated and conceived naturally, and she had a baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
So just showing you the nourishing the soil idea, and that was, it made me think of that case, because she came 4 times a week in order for us to help correct her hormonal imbalance that she
Mm-hmm.
had, again, without using medication. So she had gone through an IVF, unsuccessful transfer, chemical pregnancy, and then rather than having to go into her next frozen, she was able to conceive naturally. And again, our goal is healthy baby. So whether that happens in the bedroom or in the lab, we want healthy baby. And
Mm-hmm.
so in her case, the only concern I had, which I didn't express it so much, is that embryo that she made was made in that less optimal hormonal environment, because she didn't have the progesterone estrogen balance because she doesn't ovulate. She had the high androgens. She evidenced by blood tests, acne, hirsutism. She was overweight, mood. So all these microbiome we could tell were probably off.
Mm-hmm.
And so that embryo was made in that environment as well. So not just uterine receptivity. And in this case, that egg that got ovulated was in a nice environment over a 3-month period.
Hmm. That's amazing. And I think it just has so much hope for women who do have PCOS or maybe even endometriosis, because I think a lot of times, at least in America, I can't really speak for Canada, like conventional doctors, Western medicine doctors are just like I'm working with a woman who has PCOS right now. They pretty much denied that she even had PCOS, even though her androgens were high, her FSH and LH were off, and they just said meds. Like this is what your option is, without, really nourishing that soil. And that breaks my heart, because then, of course, if they do move forward with it, they might not have those results, right? Because they weren't nourishing that soil to begin with. So
Absolutely.
for her to
Well,
be able to conceive in what it was like a 3 to 4 month period that she was working with you.
yeah, it took about before 5 months she was pregnant naturally, but
Yeah.
she worked hard and she came in a lot. But it's ideal that, we're talking about the ideal situation, and we live in a time where integration is happening, and some people just do letrozole or Clomid and they conceive, with PCOS sometimes. But our goal is we want you to be at your peak fertility potential and that health blueprint of the child. And I like treating PCOS because we treat it well. That's why I like it, right? It's
Mhm.
something that most cases I feel pretty confident about. And same thing in the IVF world. They feel pretty confident either through their ovulation drugs or IVF. They'll probably get you there. We don't get the easy cases, right? Like this woman had been through IVF, been through
Mhm.
letrozole, Clomid, and yet we were able to help her. If you talk about ideal, time and money is not an issue. Yeah, diet, lifestyle, acupuncture, laser, supplements, all that stuff you can do, right? And some people, they don't have access to this, or some people also just the timing based on their scenario need to go into more aggressive interventions.
Mhm.
But I hear what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with that. It'd be nice if people had more of the wellness part of the treatment, because it's underutilized for a lot of people, just the diet part, because
Yeah.
it's not super expensive. It doesn't have fancy bells and whistles to just
Mhm.
change your diet, and movement, and working on your sleep, and working on stress reduction. That's why I created the Conscious Fertility podcast, to kind of inspire people to help them work on their mindset and on the emotional side,
Mhm.
because that can impact your gene expression and your health as well. And we live in a time where people can, not all, but there's a lot of stuff that people can access. And remember, I started in 2000 and in 2002 a lot with fertility. The clinics were telling people not to do acupuncture. The clinics were people saying, don't take coenzyme Q10. Now
Right.
the IVF clinics sell coenzyme Q10. Now most of them have acupuncturists that come on site for them. So at the time of this recording, it's a much more integrated, better patient-centered environment than it was in 2002, for sure.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely, for sure. And much more well accepted too, obviously, from what you were saying. And to kind of go back to when you were explaining about the seed and not really seeing, anything sprouting or the fruits and flowers. One thing to consider and think about, obviously, it can be hard to be patient and to wait, because we live in a pretty instant gratification world
Yeah.
and time. But if you think about the amount of time it took for that dis-ease to really kind of take place in your body, whether it's, gut imbalance, hormonal imbalance, whatever it may be, it's going to take some time to be able to kind of recover that vitality and that wellness back in your peak fertility as well.
And relatively, it's not a long time. It seems like it because when people see you or see me, they wanted to be pregnant a long time ago, right? However, this dis-ease, this imbalance that they're seeing in their body, has been decades in the making. And we're saying 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So really, it's not a long time. It just seems a long time because of our frame of reference that we wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be pregnant before.
Yeah.
I share another story, and I'll share my what I call almost miracle stories. But this is the mind body part, because being in practice now 23 years, and over 20 of it being related to reproductive health, I've come to understand and appreciate our mental health and our spiritual well-being, and how much this can impact our fertility. And we do now know in the West, the science, psychoneuroimmunology, that your thoughts and your feelings do impact your immune system and your nervous system and your endocrine system. So it's not just woo-woo out there. We
Mhm.
know this. And we have a really nice episode with Alice Domar on our Conscious Fertility podcast talking about stress and fertility. We have over 50 episodes talking about the emotional well-being. This woman came to us in her mid 30s, diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency. So she wasn't ovulating, evidenced by her blood test, and she she came knowing this is that conscious spiritual side where she just knew she was going to have a child. Now everything on paper said no. Her AMH was undetectable, her anti-Mullerian hormone. Her latest antral follicle count, they didn't see any follicles. She didn't respond to the Clomid or letrozole, and she was no longer ovulating. So just so you know, for um, transparency and ethical, I said to her that, on paper, it doesn't look like this can happen. And she was aware of that. Donor egg was not something that she was willing to do, or even IVF. It was natural or adoption. And she felt pretty confident she's going to be a mom. I've only seen about 5 cases like this where everybody wants a baby, but I mean, believed it in her heart. And
Mhm.
she said, "You're just going to help me get there." And we did the low level laser therapy twice a week. We did the acupuncture, the Chinese herbs, which also I think is underutilized, Chinese herbs. And I did the conscious work that I do in my practice with her. And when we do the conscious work, this is really getting into on a subconscious level. So I'm not a therapist, a counselor. I'm not doing counseling. Those are available through fertility clinics. This is really working on belief change work, where I bring my background as a clinical hypnotherapist into this as well. Because when you lower the resistance, flow and receptivity happens in Chinese medicine. Flow and receptivity is necessary for fertility, but this also lowers all those stress hormones in the body. So there's a physical and then spiritual, which we won't talk about probably today. And we worked with her, and like all women, I do my conscious work. The first 2 or 3 sessions was about fertility and the baby. Then after that, it was all about childhood stuff that came up, old trauma, whatever that they were healing. And she started ovulating again.
Wow.
And then her REI saw that and gave her some letrozole, and then things got wonky again. And so we were treating her again twice a week. One of those weeks was conscious fertility session with AcuLaser. The other one was just regular AcuLaser, no conscious work, herbs, supplements, diet. And she was great. She followed all the instructions, used the tools and techniques at home on the conscious side as well. And I invited her to take a break from the letrozole because we noticed that it was messing up her cycle. Like we'd get some good cycles, good lengths, and then she'd do the letrozole and things just, she didn't get pregnant, and they kind of changed her cycle length. So for her specifically, just thought, can we have 3 months of no medication?
Mhm.
And so we treated her for 9 months. I said, 3 to 6. That's why I thought of this. She came for 9 months, and she conceived naturally and had a baby girl.
Wow.
And what I shared with her, this was the part that when she came in, on paper, it did not look good.
Mhm.
Donor egg was what she was advised. She didn't want to do it. IVF, they didn't think it would work, but that was the only thing, if she's not going to do donor egg, they could try, and that wasn't an option for her. And I shared it with her, and this is what I want to share with your audience, that these cases like that are like buying the lotto ticket, which is what I said to her. When you buy the lotto, you hear on my websites all the winners I have, but for every winner, there are so many that did not win the lotto.
Mm.
But if you don't buy the lotto ticket, you can't win the lotto, right? So the question is, knowing the odds, do you want to buy this lotto ticket? Because the odds aren't great, right?
Mhm.
And we've had people that bought the lotto ticket. So we have stories like this woman where it doesn't make sense, but
Right.
yet they were able to succeed. Our goal is that you're physically, mentally, emotionally good, whether you have baby or not. Our goal
Mhm.
is to make you on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level as vital, as healthy as possible. So if you have a baby, you're a healthy parent and your child has that good epigenetic health blueprint.
Mhm.
And if you don't, yes, you'll be disappointed, but you're still better off physically, mentally for the work you've done. And you'll
Mhm.
be able to deal with the disappointment of not having a child, and you're mentally, physically better. Nobody goes through an IVF cycle saying, it didn't work, but I feel better that I did it. It was worth the $10,000 plus dollars. Most people, when they see people like yourself, Katie, or myself, they have more energy, they sleep better, their skin's clearer, their bowels are regular, their temperatures are better. And obviously, they're disappointed if it doesn't work to give them a child. However, they're usually physically and mentally in a better place than when they started.
I completely agree. And I do like to remind my clients or community that it is more than just getting that positive pregnancy test. There is more to this. And I think, at least from my experience with, it took us 10 months to get pregnant. That was a very frustrating time because I wasn't receiving like any support or guidance from my doctors. But when I look back on it, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be where I am right now today. So I do think it's also, presented in front of us to learn and to grow and to, it's a very transformative journey, right?
Yeah, it's transformative. And I have such awe, as you probably do, like the growth that they have to, like the stress, the trauma from the things that don't work, the miscarriages, the failed IVF or implantation. So it is transformative growth. I wouldn't sign up for it. But like you said, when you go through it, people do have transformative experiences and grow spiritually often from this. But for many people, it brings you to your knees.
Yeah.
And fertility, and I talk about this on the Conscious Fertility podcast with the expert guests that I have.
Yeah.
The fertility journey is your wake up call. Some people get cancer. Some people have a financial bankruptcy. Some people have a divorce. And for the people I see, infertility. And it's your wake up call. And then people go and grow personally, spiritually. And if most of them have that transformation where they're grateful for the experience because of who they've become. But at the beginning and while you're in it, no, nobody's liking the process. It's not.
Yeah.
While you're in it, it is not like the wow or the awe that I have for these people and the perseverance and the endurance, what they go through. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a journey to take lightly for sure. I think that is a beautiful place to really kind of end. I know that you and I will probably be doing more podcasts on here because you have so much wisdom to offer, more with the acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, and even more on the conscious fertility aspect. I'd love to dive into that with you on another episode because that is a place where I'm being drawn to more to serve and help and support my clients. So that's definitely something that I love, and it's just so fascinating to me. You had mentioned you have a freebie for the audience. I think it was an ebook,
Yeah.
and some Acubalance fertility recipes.
Yeah, we got three things we can suggest. One is where you're going with the conscious work. Check out the Conscious Fertility podcast.
Yeah.
And there's a couple with that name. So the one with Lorne Brown, and there's a link from my website as well to it. If we want, we can put something in your show notes. And then we have on the Acubalance website, we have two books. One is the Acubalance Fertility Diet with recipes. And so you remember I was sharing how people would lose weight without counting calories, because I'm not a fan of counting calories. So that's available. And then another ebook on 5 ways to maximize your fertility. So those two ebooks are available when you go to our website. And also have a meditation for those that are into the conscious fertility side that I created that you can get from us as well. So go to the website. If you can't find it easily, just email us from the website and ask us. And there's multiple Acubalances. We are the first. And it's acubalance.ca, CA, because we're in Canada. So, and Acubalance is spelled with one C. When I was an accountant, accounting is with two C's, but acupuncture is with one C. Most people spell it with two. So it's one C, Acubalance, and it's .ca. And then from the website, you can get the fertility diet, the ebook on 5 ways to maximize your fertility, and there should be links there to the Conscious Fertility podcast as well.
Beautiful. Yes. Be sure to check that out and the Conscious Fertility podcast. I will be a guest on there as well
Yes.
eventually. So where are other places that the audience can connect with you? I know that you're active on Instagram as well.
Yeah, so there's Lorne Brown Official is my Instagram handle. We also have the Acubalance website on Instagram. We also have the Conscious Fertility podcast. But I think if you go to Acubalance, there's some links up top where you can go to our Facebook and our Instagram. So there's lots of information there, or Lorne Brown Official on Instagram. And then my website has the video. So like Katie said, she's going to be on the Conscious Fertility podcast. So you can listen to that on Spotify and Apple. But on lornebrown.com, we put the YouTube video version up there as well. So you can find that at lornebrown.com is also how you can find all the things that I'm involved in.
Amazing. Yes. And I will have all of the links in the show notes as well. So do you have any final words you'd like to share?
I think be kind to yourself. This journey, when I do work with people, they start to feel that their bodies are failing them, or there's fear of a failure. And they lose the kindness for themselves. So this requires you to be kind to yourself. And there are resources out there. I think we're get more into the being and less into the doing. So there's a cost benefit where you keep adding more supplements, more things, and I don't know if the benefit's there. And so find somebody that you trust, like Katie, a coach there that can work with you and guide you, and trust your gut, your intuition as well.
I agree so much with that. So thank you so much, Dr. Lorne, for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and for really being a pioneer in the fertility space. Whoever is able to see you at your practice or even virtually, he does do virtual as well. They are so blessed to be able to have you and your practice as a resource.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.